Yes!
This video probably won't get posted on time, but at the time I'm recording this commentary, it's June 25th, 2019, and I managed to finally unlock not one, but 2 Triumph Seals in Destiny 2. After months of blood, sweat, and tears, I finally got the Chronicler and Reckoner titles. I probably played more Gambit Prime in the past couple of days than a lot of people will ever play in their entire lives, and the Triumph that took me the longest was Triumphant Reaper. I spent countless hours searching online for a comprehensive guide on the best way to unlock this Triumph, and I didn't find much of anything, so I decided to put together my own guide. So without further ado, let's get it in. Be advised that you won't get credit towards any of these unless you have at least 10 points in a Reaper armor set, which will make the third perk for this armor set available. This will make a green aura appear over your Guardian's head, which is what the Triumph also refers to. If you're a couple points shy and can't unlock the third perk, consuming a Reaper synth will also work as well. Now, getting into things, you will have to win a total of 20 matches. This part really relies on your individual skill as a player and how on point your team is. Let me tell you now that Gambit Prime can be very stressful, and if you're slacking, you'll get overwhelmed. Then it goes completely downhill from there. When I was going for wins, I contacted the best invader I knew and ensured that my other 2 fire team members had either a full set of Gambit Prime armor or were incredibly skilled at Gambit in general. If I recall correctly, the step stating that you have to defeat 1,000 combatants refers specifically to ads, but this isn't necessarily something that you have to go out of your way for. I'm not certain if enemy guardians and blockers count towards this for extra points, so if anybody can confirm this, let me know in the comment section. And I say this because there's another step that requires you to kill 100 blockers and primeval envoys. This is another simple and over a period of time investment, since it's literally impossible to succeed in a game of Gambit Prime without defeating blockers and primeval envoys. If you weren't already aware of this, the primeval envoys are the taken wizards that spawn before the primeval DPS phase. All 3 of these wizards have a different elemental shield and must be defeated in order to remove the primeval shield to make it vulnerable to damage. Along the way, you'll have to kill high value targets, or HVTs for short. Listen for the cue when the drifter says that he spotted a high value target on the field.
I spot a high value target. Give him hell!
The HVT will always be a yellow bar enemy with a white glow covering its entire body. From what I've seen, the HVT spawns in one of the areas that the current ad wave is not present in. So when you hear the drifter say that the HVT is on the field, I suggest finding it and killing it as quickly as possible, because it'll eventually run away and you will miss an opportunity of progressing as part of the Triumph. When defeated, all HVTs drop 13 motes, which is incredibly helpful. Now be advised that there is a catch-up method in Gambit Prime that'll cause enemies with the same white glow to spawn with the ad waves on the side of the field of the team that's currently losing. When defeated, these enemies drop 5 motes. I'm pointing these enemies out because they do not count towards the 50 HVTs that you need to kill. I played several hundred games of Gambit Prime, and the drifter only calls out 1 HVT per match. So, in order to complete this step, you will have to play at least 50 games of Gambit Prime. Now, the single most annoying and nerve-wracking part of this Triumph is a step that requires you to earn 10 Massacre medals. This step is the sole reason why Triumphant Reaper was the absolute last Triumph I had to unlock to obtain my Reckoner seal. In order to obtain a Massacre medal, you have to kill 12 enemies with no more than 3 seconds between each kill. And if you're a Warlock main like me, you'll eventually find out that this step can be the most difficult. Unlike Hunters and Titans, the Warlock class doesn't have a melee-based super, and I've seen more success getting Massacre medals as the other 2 classes. I've witnessed past fire team members obtain these medals a lot easier with subclasses such as Arc Strider, Bottom Tree Striker, and Sentinel. But instead of starting all over and getting a Reaper armor set again, I became best friends with Trial and Error and eventually obtained the 10 Massacre medals. If you're a Warlock player, you'll want to use Top Tree Stormcaller and Crown of Tempest. Top Tree Stormcaller doesn't have the best damage output, but the Chain Lightning attribute is what will enable you to clear ad waves quickly. The Storm Trance super will probably be the reason why you obtain the majority of your Massacre medals, but unfortunately, you won't have your super all the time. To mitigate this, I equip all pieces of my armor with an intellect mod. That reduced my super cooldown to about 3.5 minutes if I was to sit there and do absolutely nothing, but your super will cool down even faster while you're defeating ads and other various enemies on the map. Now, equipping 5 intellect mods isn't 100% mandatory, but it'll definitely make things easier, since doing so will get you your super back noticeably faster. I recommended Crown of Tempest for this because the Top Tree Nova Bomb and Skoladai Ahamkara method is nowhere near as effective as it used to be before the nerf. Before, you only had to kill about 6 ads to get your entire super back from a Nova Bomb kill, But now, you'll be lucky to get a quarter of your super back after doing this. Crown of Tempest is amazing overall because it reduces the cooldown of all of your arc abilities, including your super, which will make the 3.5 minute cooldown I spoke about earlier completely irrelevant. If you play as a hunter, I suggest using Arc Strider with Right Influx. Right Influx will not only increase the damage of your arc staff attacks, it'll also increase the duration of your super. For Titans, I suggest using Bottom Tree Sentinel with Doomfang Pauldrons or Bottom Tree Striker. Bottom Tree Striker is amazing because it has great damage output, and each time you kill something, you return some super energy back. As stated previously, you won't have your super all the time, so you'll have to have a secondary method of rapid ad clear. I had the most success with Wrist Runner after getting the Arc Conductor buff. After taking art damage, you receive an empowerment that causes enemies shot by Wrist Runner to chain art damage to other nearby enemies, and the art damage you receive is reduced. Wrist Runner also does increase damage and has infinite ammo for 5 seconds, but this timer restarts and can keep going indefinitely, provided that you're killing ads. And the cool thing about this is that Wrist Runner doesn't have to be currently equipped for Arc Conductor to proc. If you aren't able to find a source to receive art damage from the proc Arc Conductor, you can throw an Arc Grenade at your feet to damage yourself to proc the perk. In order for this to work, you have to take damage from the initial detonation of the grenade. I also found out the Radiolarian fluid on the map Legion's Folly will also proc Arc Conductor. So say for example, the Drifter says that the next ad wave will be spawning on steps in Legion's Folly. You could jump into the Radiolarian fluid, proc Arc Conductor, and potentially get an easy Massacre Medal. In your kinetic and heavy weapon slot, you'll want to use something with a damage ramp up perk like Rampage or Swashbuckler. These two perks are amazing for the simple fact that they reward you for rapid kills and continue to increase in damage as you do so. I use a threat level shotgun for the Scourge of the Past raid in my kinetic slot, and that particular version rolled with Rampage. In my heavy slot, I use the Season 6 Gambit Prime Pinnacle weapon, the 21% Delirium machine gun. The overflow perk on this weapon can get your magazine size over 200, accompanying the Killing Tally perk, which works similarly to Rampage, but its effects don't go away until you stole the weapon. If I have to be honest, the kinetic and heavy weapons don't have as much relevancy as the Wrist Runner will, because in 99% of the instances where you're going for the Massacre Medals, you'll either be using your super or Wrist Runner. There are a few other things I would like to mention in regards to making it easier to get the 10 Massacre Medals. For one, the Vex will be the biggest thorn in your side, no pun intended. The Hobgoblins will always conjure their invincibility shield, and if you spend too much time focusing on it, you'll miss the 3-second window for the medal. Also, the Vex Cyclops can easily one-shot you with their Void Eye Blast. I've encountered many situations where I was 1 or 2 kills away from getting a Massacre Medal, only to be blasted out of my super by a Vex Cyclops. But out of all the enemies I went against, I would have to say that the Fallen gave me my easiest Massacre Medals. Fallen captains have arc shields which would detonate and damage nearby enemies if afflicted by arc damage, and since most of the Fallen weaponry is arc damage based, you're basically guaranteed to always have Arc Conductor procced. Now there's another thing that you need to do before attempting to go for Massacre Medals. Number 1 is getting a semi-accurate idea of how many enemies are within the vicinity. The goal is to rapidly kill 12 enemies, so if you don't see a number close to or higher than 12, it isn't worth using your super or setting up for Arc Conductor. Also, pay attention to the amount of ultra enemies in the ad waves as well. I never had a good experience with going for Massacre Medals when these enemies are present because their stomp can either kill you in one hit or send you flying across the map. If there's 1 or 2 of these ultra enemies present, but there's also a lot of ads around, and you're 100% certain that you can get a Massacre Medal, you'll want to damage the ultra and tell your fire team to team shield it. The first perk that you will unlock for the Reaper armor set is known as High Value Tracker. It enables you to mark and weaken HVTs and ultras, and when marked, the damage that they receive is increased by a lot. As stated previously, you'll want to prioritize these enemies and get rid of them as quickly as possible, because they'll cause a ton of problems if you let them stick around for too long. Alright everybody, information overload over. I hope that this guide was beneficial to you, and I hope that you persevere and get that Reckoner title. Now if you made it to the end of this video and enjoyed what you watched, do me a favor and thumb rush that like button until it turns blue. And if you're new to my neck of the woods, go ahead and subscribe to the channel and click that bell icon so you don't ever miss a video of the most elite gaming content. But with that being stated, 1LHD is over and out. Y'all take it easy. Triumphant Sentry is one of the triumphs required to unlock the Reckoner title and will embark you on the path of Gambit Prime Sentry role. By the time you completed this triumph, you will be a blocker killer machine. And in this video, we're going to discuss the most effective methods of unlocking this triumph and how to get those locksmith medals quickly and efficiently. So without further ado, let's get it in. The Triumphant Sentry triumph is split up into 5 different sections: winning 20 matches, marking 40 enemy invaders, 200 blockers defeated, 150 taken defeated, and 20 locksmith medals earned. These steps can all be completed at the same time and are sequential, so you'll be progressing all 5 of these simultaneously. previously. This triumph specifically states that you must have the sentry aura present while going for all of these steps, or else none of your progress will count. Now the aura itself appears as a streak of gold around your guardian's head. First up, let's talk about marking invaders. In order to do this, you will have to inflict damage on an enemy invader, and an X will appear on the enemy invader's body. This makes the invader's location visible to you and your entire fire team, and will remain present for a few seconds or until you die. Now if you use exotics such as Foe Tracer and One-Eyed Mask, you'll be very familiar with this. Also, the Drifter will say that the invader has been marked after you inflicted damage to him. As for the blockers defeated and taken defeated, these will honestly be completed around the same time. Primeval envoys, the various minions that the Primeval summons, blockers, Primeval themselves are all taken enemies, and it's impossible to progress in a game of Gambit Prime without killing these guys. So these two portions of this quest will complete themselves naturally. The portion of this quest titled Medals Earned is very vague, but to complete this, you will have to obtain 20 Locksmith medals. Locksmith medals are rewarded to the Guardian responsible killing the final blocker to reopen a bank 3 times. Be advised that you won't get a Locksmith medal unless you were personally responsible for killing a blocker to open the bank. Small blockers are relatively simple to kill, but you would definitely want to inform your teammates to help you weaken the medium and large blockers, since those blockers are incredibly annoying to fight alone. Whatever method you utilize, just make sure that you're the one who deals the final blow to the final blocker in order to reopen the moat bank. As a sentry, killing blockers and keeping the moat bank open as often as possible is your main job anyways, so you can honestly spend a lot of time around the moat bank and shoot enemies from afar to help your teammates with ads. Now I don't fully recommend babysitting the moat bank or spending a lot of time around it unless you're in a full fire team of 4 and or if your team is winning. To keep the blockers in check, your best friend will be a shotgun, and if it's possible, try and farm for a pair of sentry boots and a chest piece with arc affinity so you can equip the shotgun scavenger mod to the boots and a shotgun ammo reserves to the chest piece. If you're using a legendary shotgun, equip the mod known as Major Spec to further increase the damage dealt to the blockers. And if you have any taken spec mods from the last Wish raid, those are incredibly helpful here too. Perks such as 1-2 punch and trench barrel combined with the aforementioned mods will enable you to take care of blockers in the blink of an eye. Trench barrel is a perk that increases the damage of your shotgun for the first 3 rounds fired after meleeing an opponent. Trench barrel is a perk available on a Scourge of the Past raised threat level, the Year 3 Perfect Paradox, and the Menagerie's Imperial Decree. 1-2 punch is similar to threat level in the sense that it involves melee, but in order to proc 1-2 punch, every pellet from your shotgun's buckshot spread must hit the opponent. This perk is easiest to proc on bigger targets, or if you're within whisper distance to an opponent. Once a full buckshot blast hits an opponent, immediately melee him for some insane melee damage. This perk is available on Hawthorne's Field for a shotgun, the Moon's One Small Step, Gambit Prime's Last Man Standing, and the Garden of Salvation raid's Prophet of Doom. Lord of Wolves, with or without the Release the Wolves perk proc, makes short work of blockers, and I've been able to take down large blockers with little to no effort. The same applies to the Legend of Acreus, and if I'm not mistaken, Legend of Acreus can kill a large blocker in about 3 or 4 shots. If you have some ammo left over, you can also use that on the Primeval, since Legend of Acreus is one of the best DPS weapons in PvE. I know that I really fixated on the potency of shotguns, but there are also other effective methods for clearing blockers. A lot of people don't know this, but swords are incredibly potent at killing blockers, and it's all from the uppercut attack. This attack is available on all swords except for the Hunter's Gold Tusk and Quick Fang swords, and the Titan's Crown Splitter and Throne Cleaver swords. The uppercut attack only consumes the equivalent of 3 light sword swings, which is a small price to pay for such reliable damage. Now for warlocks, you'll be happy to know that the new Gambit Prime Ritual Shotgun Python is void damage, which pairs amazingly with Nezarec Sin. Nezarec Sin grants an ability cooldown for all your abilities after killing enemies with void damage. So if you equip Top Tree Nova Bomb, Python, and the Crucible Sword Steel Sybil Z14, I think that's how you pronounce it, you'll be clearing blockers like it's nobody's business. And if the blockers ever get out of hand, you can simply nuke them with your Nova Bomb, which makes short work of almost anything in the game. Geomax Stabilizers combined with Chaos Reach is pretty good too, and this is a build that you might be using for Primeval DPS anyways, so you'll be happy to know this effective against blockers as well. Titans, your best friend will be the Syntheseps combined with Thunder Crash, also known as Middle Tree Fist of Havoc. The Biotic Enhancements perk on the Syntheseps will buff your melee and super damage when surrounded, so if it ever comes a point in time where the enemy team spams you with blockers, Panic Super and the blockers will work effortlessly. Middle Tree Fist of Havoc also has a perk known as Inertia Override, which grants you a damage boost and reloads your currently equipped weapon after sliding over ammo. Top Tree Sunbreaker combined with Peregrine Greaves is also an amazing combo, and if you airborne shoulder charge large blockers, you can take them down easily. Another route to take would be the Hollowfire Heart, which decreases your ability cooldowns while your super is active. Hollowfire Heart's perk does stack with melee and grenade mods to increase your discipline and strength stats as well, so keep that in mind. Hollowfire Heart will be be of great assistance when it comes to keeping your melee charge. And if it ever comes a point in time where you have to use your super, don't be afraid to, because you can easily switch over to Peregrine Grease until your super fully recharges, then switch back to Hollow Fire Heart. For the hunters, I would suggest using Celestial Nighthawk with Bottom Tree Golden Gun. This has always and will always be one of the most reliable DPS methods and insta-kill buttons for the hunter class. Medium, large, and even giant blockers won't stand a chance against this, but you have to 100% make sure that you always aim for the head. If not, you're losing a lot of DPS. Oh yeah, and Blade Barrage with Shards of Galanor is also still pretty solid even after the nerfs. Alright, that does it for this one, everybody. I hope that this guide was helpful. In the comment section, tell me what your favorite Gambit Prime role is and how close you are to the Reckoner title. If you made it to the end of this video and enjoyed what you watched, do me a favor and thumb wrestle that like button till it turns blue. And if you're new to my neck of the woods, go ahead and subscribe to the channel and click the bell icon so you won't ever miss a video of the most elite gaming content. But with that being stated, 1LHD is over and out. Y'all take it easy. So, you're after the Reckoner seal, and the Triumphant Invader Triumph is standing between you and your brand new title. You also either suck at invading, you want to get better at invading, or you have no idea what weapons and or what loadouts are used to invade effectively. And I'm 100% sure that one of the aforementioned reasons is what led you to this video. But fret not, because in this video we'll discuss the most effective ways of how to invade, as well as how to be the biggest inconvenience as an invader in Gambit Prime. To be honest, both of these basically mean the same thing, but without further ado, let's get it in. The Triumphant Invader Triumph is split up into 6 separate parts that are all progressed at the same time, meaning that they aren't broken down into individual steps that have to be completed one at a time. Progress towards this triumph will not count unless you have the Invader Aura, which is a red aura that appears above your Guardian's head. This aura will manifest once you have a certain amount of Gambit Prime Invader armor equipped to have access to the Killmonger perk, which is unlocked once your total perk points equal 10, if I'm not mistaken, so feel free to correct me if I'm wrong in the comment section. Although it is possible to do this by mixing and matching illicit, outlaw, and notorious tiers of the armor and consuming the Invader synth, I would highly suggest grinding out the Reckoning and leveling up your synthesizer to the legendary rarity, in which it'll assume the name of Powerful Synthesizer. This will allow you to craft notorious level Gambit Prime gear. Now I'm gonna go ahead and suggest that you stick with the character that you're most familiar and comfortable with, because the synthesizer is character specific and is not shared amongst the entire account. This means that if you have a powerful synthesizer in your Warlock, for example, this won't have anything to do with the other 2 characters. If you are familiar with how the Reckoning works, I highly suggest that you watch my video titled What is the Reckoning, because in that video I explain all of the how-tos and intricacies of the Reckoning. But back to it. Once the red aura appears above your Guardian's head, it's open season for you to become the biggest annoyance in Gambit Prime. The 6 parts that this triumph consists of are the following: win 10 matches, land 10 super final blows, land 25 final blows with sniper rifles and or linear fusion rifles, 25 final blows with fusion rifles and or shotguns, and 100 most drain. Now there's also another step that states that you got to get 25 quote-unquote other kills, but these will come along the way on their own while you're working on the other steps, so I won't be saying anything about this step in this video. If you aren't already aware of this, the most effective way to invade is to engage the 4 opposing Guardians at long range. During the 30 seconds that you're invading the other side, you'll have wall hacks, the ability to see how many motes each opposing Guardian is carrying, and an overshield. This overshield is even more resilient if you have at least 6 points invested into the Invader set to unlock the lethal defense perk, making it significantly more difficult for the opponents to kill you. Now, giving all of these tools to the right person would make that particular person a walking war machine, and that's exactly what you would be if you follow my advice closely. Let's talk about the super kills first. You will need 25 of these, so it's really your decision on what to use. Now, if you follow my suggestion in regards to sticking with one particular character, I'm pretty sure that you chose your main character, which is the one that you're most familiar with. You'll want to avoid one-time use shutdown supers such as Nova Bomb, Thunder Crash, and Blade Barrage, since the goal is to net as many super kills as possible during each invasion. For the Warlock class, I would suggest Dawnblade, both top and bottom trees for different reasons. Top tree Dawnblade is arguably one of the best PvP supers in the game as of presently, due to its ability to double Icarus dash outside of the super and indefinitely Icarus dash within the super, making this super incredibly annoying to go against. And due to the fact that this skill tree is referred to as Attunement of the Sky, you should take that literally, because it's more than possible to remain airborne and rain flaming swords upon the enemy team. Even after the nerf to Burst Glide within the super, bottom tree Dawnblade is still pretty solid due to its ability to return super energy on every successful kill within the super. Also, via bottom tree Dawnblade's Fated for the Flame perk, the sword projectiles are able to track opponents, so as long as you can catch up with the opponents, killing them won't be that big of an issue. The footage on screen is of me using bottom tree Dawnblade before the Burst Glide nerf, and even though Burst Glide doesn't promote the speed benefits that you see here, it's still possible to achieve this speed via Strafe Glide within the super. The only downside is that you won't be able to propel yourself forward very quickly outside of the super. I suppose that this was Bungie's way of balancing Dawnblade, as well as giving the other Warlock jumps aside from Burst Glide some sort of a chance. It's also somewhat possible to get away with using top tree Stormcaller. If you decide to go this route, I suggest using your super while your grenade and melee energy is full in order to take advantage of the Transcendence perk, which increases the duration of your super. Pair this with the exotic helmet known as Crown of Tempest, and your super will last last seemingly forever. The main superlative of top tree Stormcaller over bottom tree is the Ionic Blink perk, and this perk alone enables you to cover distances to get you closer to your opponents. Titans. My personal favorite Titan subclass is Sunbreaker, and when it comes to invasions, I can confirm that either top or bottom tree will be the way to go. Now, if you're already accustomed to the trajectory of the hammers, getting those Army of One medals would be a breeze. The Vulcan's Rage perk is one of the many reasons why I enjoy top tree Sunbreaker, because upon impact, your hammers explode into molten embers. This means that it's entirely possible to kill multiple enemies at once with a single hammer. Now, the most I've ever killed at the same time by doing this is 2, but the molten embers explosion is incredibly forgiving and will punish anybody within proximity. Bottom tree Sunbreaker's Endless Siege perk spawns sunspots upon wherever your hammer is impacted, and when you stand inside of a sunspot, you throw hammers faster. But if you pass through a sunspot, you'll be granted the Sun Warrior buff, which reduces the cooldown of your abilities and increases the duration of your super. That increased super duration is heaven sent for those moments where the enemies run to the back of the map and cower because they're trying to prevent dying and losing motes. Sentinel is also a pretty good choice as well. All 3 trees of this super are pretty amazing, so I suggest going with whichever path you're most comfortable with. Within the super, you have the ability to throw your shield, block incoming damage, and shield bash opponents, and all 3 of these abilities are useful for different things. Talented users of the Sentinel super can take advantage of the shield's ability to ricochet off of hard surfaces and track opponents, and a lunge of the shield bash is also incredibly forgiving as well. If you enjoy the Striker subclass, I can only suggest going with bottom tree. Although it isn't as strong as it used to be after a couple of nerfs, this is still one of the most reliable Titan supers due to its ability to return super energy upon kill and cover a lot of ground simply by spamming the shoulder charge. To get the most out of the super, you'll want to avoid using a slam attack to the best of your ability and stick with using a shoulder charge, since the slam attack uses significantly more super energy. For hunters, I've noticed that both top and bottom tree Golden Gun is the best way to go. The Golden Gun super is hit scan, meaning that the projectiles don't have travel time, which works amazingly for an invader. Top tree Golden Gun enables you to shoot 6 bullets that return around after a successful kill, which is incredibly useful since you have a total of 4 targets. Bottom tree Golden Gun is equally as amazing, however the only downside is that bottom tree gives you only 3 Golden Gun rounds to work with. But the most beneficial part about this is that unlike top tree, bottom tree Golden Gun can crit, and it's always likely that somebody will panic pop their super on you while you're invading. Luckily, the damage of bottom tree Golden Gun is pretty amazing and can easily shut supers down. Spectral Blaze is a decent option as well based on the quick movement speed within the super. This super lasts a pretty long time, and it's possible to spam the light attack button to cover a lot of ground and still have a decent amount of super energy left. However, due to the fact that this is a melee based super, you have 0 projectiles to work with, but on the bright side, the lunge range of the melee attack is incredibly forgiving, just like that of the Sentinel super. For the stats that require you to get 25 kills with sniper rifles and or linear fusion rifles, as well as the stat that requires you to get 25 kills with fusion rifles and or shotguns, you don't have to get 25 kills with each of these weapon types. You could literally stick to one of these weapons or use them all. If you snipe a lot, you probably have 1 or 2 snipers that you use frequently, and as long as you aim for the head, the enemy guardians would die, and that's about it. However, if you're not the best shot, you can use a Hone S ×4 Izanagi's Burden and body shot everybody. Now, if you're gonna do this, make sure that you have a few sniper rifle ammo reserve mods equipped to an Arc Affinity chest armor, because you'll be burning through ammo very quickly by doing this. Revoker is also an amazing option as well. Being an aggressive range sniper rifle, Revoker can headshot enemies out of their super, and its Reversal of Fortune perk returns a round to the magazine if said round was a missed shot. If you have a sniper rifle with a box breathing perk such as Beloved, there are situations where you'll be able to one-shot opposing guardians to the body. For linear fusion rifles, it's hard to recommend anything else other than the Arbalest. Arbalest is the only linear fusion rifle in the game that takes special ammo, which places it above the other linear fusion rifles in regards to ammo economy, since the other linear fusion rifles in the game take heavy ammo. But if you wanted to, you could double down by equipping Arbalest and having something such as Komodo FR4 in your heavy slot. Despite the fact that they've been nerfed, Sleeper Simulant and Queenbreaker are still pretty viable options. The raw power Sleeper Simulant allows it to one-shot almost anything, and Queenbreaker's aim assist is still pretty forgiving, and it blinds enemies on hit. So if you don't kill them, you would at least disorient them for a few seconds to increase the likelihood of your next shot being a killing blow. For shotgun and fusion rifle kills, I took the scummy route and used 1000 Voices. Of course, this exotic can only be obtained as a random drop from the final boss of the Last Wish raid, so it's not expected for everybody in the world to have it. 1000 Voices is very forgiving because all you gotta do is aim in the general direction of where your opponent is and shoot. As much as I hate this weapon, Jotun is also a good option as well. Its insanely high impact gives it some insane one-shot potential, and projectiles from this weapon also have some pretty forgiving tracking as well. Now, if you have a nicely rolled Aaron tail to use for PvP, that'll do an amazing job here too, as well as the loaded question. Your fusion rifle of choice probably won't make that big of a difference, but I would highly suggest using fusion rifles that belong to the high impact and precision frame archetypes, since these archetypes have high range and high impact. Your go-to shotguns for PvP will work here as well. Mindbender's Ambition, Dust Rod Blues, Imperial Decree, yeah, they all work here. Legend of Acreus also puts in a lot of work here too. And if you already haven't unlocked the Gambit Prime Ritual Shotgun, it's Python, this would be a good time to work on that here too. The only thing that sucks about using shotguns as an invader is that you would have to get very close to net to kill, which is the complete opposite of what you would usually be doing as an invader, but it's still very, very possible. The step that says that you have to drain 100 enemy motes requires you to first have 15 points invested into the invader armor set. Once you do this, you'll lock down the enemy side's mote bank when you invade, and standing next to it will drain motes from the enemy's bank to your team's mote bank. If I'm not mistaken, only one mote drains about every second or 1.5 seconds, so this is a step that will definitely take a while, but be advised that the opposing team's mote bank has to have motes in it for them to be drained. I understand that this is common sense, but I felt the need to mention that anyways. But yeah, if you want to be a huge annoyance, and if you're playing as a Titan, you can cast Water Dawn over the enemy's mote bank. The opposing side will have no choice but to use their supers to kill you or waste heavy ammo, which is good news for you since doing so will decrease their DPS potential against the primeval. Weather Radiance is a decent substitute, but it's a lot easier to get killed inside of a well than it is inside of a bubble, so do that at your own risk. Well, everybody, that's all I got for you. I hope that this guide was helpful. If you made it to the end of this video, or if you watched this video and became more comfortable at invading Gambit Prime, go ahead and thumb wrestle that like button until it turns blue. And if you're new to my neck of the woods, go ahead and subscribe to the channel and click that bell icon so you don't ever miss a video of the most elite gaming content. But with that being stated, 1LHD is over and out. Y'all take it easy. Triumphant Collector. This is one of the Gambit Prime role-oriented triumphs that you'll be required to complete in order to obtain a Reckoner seal. Fortunately, this one is a lot less of a headache than the other three for the simple fact that your one and only job is to bank motes, which is what both of the Gambit archetypes revolve around. Now, be advised that this triumph, like all of the other Gambit Prime role-oriented triumphs, can only be progressed and unlocked in Gambit Prime, and not regular Gambit. The Triumphant Collector triumph is split up into 5 separate parts that are all progressed at the same time, meaning that they aren't broken down into individual steps. They have to be completed one at a time or in any particular order. Progress towards this triumph will not count unless you have the Collector Aura, which is a white aura that appears above your Guardian's head. This aura will manifest once you have a certain amount of Gambit Prime Collector armor equipped to have access to the Cashback perk, which is unlocked once your total perk points equal 10. Although it is possible to do this by mixing and matching illicit, outlaw, and notorious tiers of the armor, I would highly suggest grinding out the Reckoning and leveling up your synthesizer to the legendary rarity, in which it'll assume the name of Powerful Synthesizer, since this will allow you to craft notorious level Gambit Prime gear. Now, if you aren't familiar with the Reckoning game mode, I highly suggest that you watch my video titled What is the Reckoning to get an idea of how the game type works and what to do. I have a link of the What is the Reckoning video provided in the description box of this video. Now, I'm gonna go ahead and suggest that you stick with the character you're most familiar with and comfortable with, because the synthesizer is character specific and is not shared amongst your entire account. This means that if you have a powerful synthesizer on your Warlock, for example, this won't have anything to do with your other 2 characters. But yeah, like I was saying before, once the white aura appears above your Guardian's head, it's time to become a professional mote hoarder. The 5 points of this triumph consist of are the following: win 10 matches, deposit 1,000 motes, summon 100 small blockers, summon 40 giant blockers, and earn 15 half-bank medals. As a collector, it's pretty obvious that your number 1 goal is to hoard motes, but ad clear and survivability are just as important. I suggest running a build that focuses on recovery so that you aren't kept out of engagements for too long. A resilience-based build is a decent option as well, but recovery dictates the speed of your health and shield recovery, so I would suggest taking that route instead. Remember, if you're dying, you're either A, losing motes all the time, B, not alive to gather motes, or both, so stay alive. I'm a Warlock main, so fulfilling a collector role was a piece of cake because this class has a lot of healing capabilities, but the Hunter Exotic Helmet Wormhorse Crown and the perk known as Reversal from the Bottom Tree Striker skill path are some examples of great options for the other 2 classes that grant healing capabilities. But one of the more useful collector role perks will be Umbra Armor, which grants an overshield after you pick up 5 motes in rapid succession. Having an overshield combined with high recovery will most definitely keep you alive. Now, it really doesn't make a difference what weapons you decide to use, but if I had any suggestions, it would be shotguns over anything else. Shotguns have very high damage output, and perks such as Trench Barrel, Rampage, Swashbuckler, and 1-2 Punch will make short work of your enemies. Thanks to the Cashback perk, it's possible to exclusively use a shotgun to clear ads, and I was able to do this frequently enough to the point where I hardly ever had to use my primary weapon. Cashback gives you free kinetic and energy ammo every time you bank motes, and since you will be doing a lot of that, you will never run out of special ammo. Okay, so now that we step past the fundamentals, let's take a look at each of the steps that you will have to complete in order to unlock this triumph. Now, when it comes to the steps that state that you have to bank 1,000 motes and summon 100 small blockers, it's easier to explain both of these steps at the same time. Banking 1,000 motes is something that'll happen over time, meaning that you won't have to go out of your way to get this step done. As for the 100 small blockers, all you gotta do is bank no more than 9 motes at a time, and you will always send a taken goblin over to the enemy side, which is also known as a small blocker. However, you need to bank at least 5 motes to summon one of these guys, but once again, if you bank more than 9 motes, you will summon a medium blocker at 10, a large blocker at 15, and a giant blocker at 20. And doing so will not progress this part of the Triumph. It's always recommended to bank no more than 5 motes anyways, because small blockers are incredibly annoying based off the fact that they can make other taken enemies invincible. The part of this Triumph that instructs you to summon 40 giant blockers isn't possible unless you have 15 collector roll points. Doing so will unlock the final collector armor perk known as high yield savings, which states that you can carry up to 20 motes instead of 15, and depositing 20 motes at once sends a giant blocker to the enemy arena. Now, if you've never seen a giant blocker before, think of the final boss of the Lake of Shadow Strike, because they're exactly the same enemy. Giant blockers are huge taken cabal that have a ton of health and have the ability to summon taken orbs that can tether and suppress enemies within proximity. Yeah, you heard that right. So anybody intelligent enough to pop their super next to a giant blocker will immediately regret it, because these tethers behave the exact same as a Night Stalker tether in a sense that anybody ensnared by them moves incredibly slow and can't use their abilities. And once again, if you use your super next to one of these things, say goodbye to it, because it's gone now. Summoning giant blockers won't be easy though, because there's a hefty fee of 20 motes required to do so. Just do your best to stay alive and you'll be fine. Aside from having to summon 40 giant blockers, this part of the Triumph will also take a huge chunk of time. However, the phrase medals earned is incredibly vague, so I'll explain what you have to do. Your one and only goal here is to achieve a medal known as half banked, which is awarded to you when you single-handedly bank 50 motes in a single round of Gambit Prime. You probably already realized that in order to summon a Primeval in Gambit Prime, you gotta bank 100 motes. And since 50 is half of 100, yeah, you get the picture. But to some extent, you can work on this part of the Triumph and summon the giant blockers at the same time. Since it takes 20 motes to summon a giant blocker, do this a second time and a third time, or bank 10 motes the third time you bank, and you will easily be at 50. You have to bank a total of 50 motes in a single match of Gambit Prime, 15 different times. So prepare to invest a lot of time towards completing this. Alright everybody, that does it for this one. I hope that this guide was beneficial to you, and I hope that watching this video gets you one step closer to getting that Reckoner seal. Now if you made it to the end of this video, do me a favor and thumb rush to that like button until it turns blue. And if you're new to my neck of the woods, go ahead and subscribe to the channel and click that bell icon so you don't ever miss a video of the most elite gaming content. But with that being stated, 1LHD is over and out. Y'all take it easy.